The hunters descend. The galaxy had long learned to fear the Zha'Kar. They were not conquerors. They were not rulers. They were hunters. Entire civilizations whispered their name in terror because the Zha'Kar did not come to trade, nor to negotiate. They came only to stalk and kill, leaving behind broken worlds littered with bones polished into trophies. Their rituals were ancient. Every generation, the clans would launch expeditions to distant stars, seeking the strongest prey. They had slain reptilian colossi that thundered across desert worlds. They had butchered telepathic predators that stalked with minds as sharp as claws. They had brought down leviathans that swam in oceans of liquid methane. Each victory was etched into their armor, each kill a mark of pride. When the scouts returned from a blue-green planet on the edge of a forgotten arm of the galaxy, the hunters were eager. The world was teeming with life. Jungles that crawled with predators, seas that churned with leviathans, skies filled with winged beasts. But it was not the beasts that intrigued them most. It was the humans. The Zha'Kar had studied transmissions from Earth. They saw war, bloodshed, and violence. They saw humans build weapons that scarred their own planet. To the hunters, this was not a sign of danger, but of opportunity. Here was a species that fought constantly, sharpening themselves generation after generation. What better quarry could there be? So the Zha'Kar armada came, cloaked ships sliding silently into the night skies. On the command deck of the flagship Bloodfang, Huntmaster Veyrath addressed his warriors. He was immense, even by Zha'Kar standards, his armor adorned with skulls of creatures that would dwarf tanks. His mandibles clicked in amusement as he projected a hologram of Earth. This world calls itself Terra. Its people humans. They walk upright, they wield crude iron and fire, and they squabble like beasts. Tonight, they will learn what it means to be prey. The hunters roared in approval, slamming weapons against their armor. The first dropship descended into a stretch of wilderness, a small farming town nestled between fields and forest. To the Zha'Kar, it seemed the perfect hunting ground. Isolated, undefended, fragile. The ramp hissed open, and 7 armored hunters stalked out, their cloaks shimmering as they vanished into invisibility. They moved like shadows, taloned feet silent against the earth. The first kill came quickly. A man walking home from the fields never saw the plasma blade that pierced his chest. Another fell, his scream cut short. The hunters chuckled in their guttural language. Easy. Too easy. But something unexpected happened. The deaths did not scatter the humans in terror. They rallied. Within minutes, church bells rang, car horns blared, and lights flickered across the town. People grabbed hunting rifles, shotguns, even kitchen knives. The hunters watched in puzzlement as prey organized. One hunter leapt onto a rooftop, prepared to strike a family running below. Instead, a rifle cracked from the shadows. The bullet punched into his mask, snapping his head back. He staggered, roaring in shock. No prey had ever dared to strike so boldly. Gunfire erupted from windows and alleys. The cloaked figures became flickering targets as humans fired blind but fierce, forcing them back. The hunters activated their plasma rifles, cutting down walls and cars in blazing streaks of energy. Flames spread, smoke thickened, and still the humans pressed forward. Veyrath, watching from orbit, frowned. The feed from his warriors' masks showed not panic, but coordination. The humans set ambushes. They flanked. They shouted to one another, moving with surprising discipline. One hunter stalked a group near the barn, only to step onto hidden wires. The trap triggered an explosion of gasoline and nails that shredded his armor, leaving him howling in the dirt until more bullets silenced him. Another hunter attempted to seize a child, expecting screams. Instead, the boy hurled a flare into his face, blinding him long enough for the boy's father to drive a pitchfork through the gaps in his armor. The Zha'Kar arrogance began to falter. These were not like the other prey species. They did not scatter. They fought like corner wolves. Within an hour, 5 hunters were dead. The last 2 tried to retreat, activating their cloaks, but the humans hunted them down with dogs, flashlights, and sheer determination. By dawn, the town stood in ruins, but it stood, and the hunters lay in pieces. On the flagship, Veyrath watched the aftermath in silence. The feed cut to static as the last hunter's mask was crushed under a human boot. Around him, his warriors murmured uneasily. It was not the loss of 7 hunters that disturbed them. It was the manner of it. Prey was meant to scream, to flee, to beg, not to fight back with fire and fury. Veyrath rose slowly, his mandibles twitching. Interesting, he growled. The hunt may not be as simple as we thought. Far below, the humans buried their dead. Their grief hardened into rage. And across Earth, as stories spread of monsters falling to ordinary hands, a truth took root. The invaders were not untouchable. They bled, they died, and humanity had just learned how to hunt them. Humans bite back. The fires in the farming town still smoldered when the first news report spread. At first, the world dismissed the images as hysteria, grainy footage of towering armored figures, flashes of light, bodies tore apart. But when the same stories poured in from Brazil, Kenya, Russia, and Indonesia, disbelief turned into fear. The skies were no longer safe. The Zha'Kar thought fear was their greatest ally. On every world they had ever hunted, terror shattered resistance before it began. But Earth was different. Fear did not break humans, it bound them together. The first retaliation. In the Amazon rainforest, a squad of hunters stalked silently through the undergrowth. Their cloaks shimmered, their movements masked by centuries of perfected hunting craft. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found themselves stepping into an invisible maze. Pits covered with leaves swallowed them whole. Vines snapped tight around their limbs, jerking them into the air like trapped game. Poison-tipped arrows rained from the canopy, striking the gaps in their armor. The Zha'Kar had expected a hunt. Instead, they became quarry for indigenous tribes who knew the jungle better than any map. The hunters roared, slashing at the trees, but every attack hit only shadows. One by one, they felled by prey who fought with patience, precision, and the land itself. When the last survivor's plasma rifle sputtered empty, he tried to activate his cloak to retreat. He didn't make it 2 steps before the jungle swallowed him in silence. Urban war. On the other side of the world, a squad of Zha'Kar descended into Nairobi. They spread into the streets, cloaks shimmering as they moved among the shadows. Their blades cut down civilians in flashes of light. They expected screams, chaos, and a stampede of prey. Instead, they found themselves under fire from rooftops. Snipers, organized by hastily gathered police and military units, tracked the faint distortions of their cloaks. The first hunter dropped with a bullet through his skull. The second staggered as grenades detonated beneath his feet. The city itself became a weapon. Humans barricaded streets, funneled the hunters into narrow alleys, then collapsed buildings on top of them. What should have been an effortless call turned into a brutal street-by-street ambush. By nightfall, the hunters were gone, burned, broken, and buried beneath rubble. The military response. On the command deck of the Bloodfang, Huntmaster Veyrath grew restless. He had dismissed the loss of his first squad as an accident, a curiosity. But the reports kept coming. Hunters were being killed, not in glorious duels, but in traps, in ambushes, in relentless counterattacks. His warriors hissed their discontent. Some called for larger deployments, overwhelming the prey with numbers. Others mocked the hunters who had fallen, insisting they were weak. Veyrath silenced them with a growl. Humans, he muttered, staring at the feed from Earth. They are not prey. They are predators who have not yet learned their place. On Earth, that prediction proved prophetic. Military forces began deploying across major cities. Satellite uplinks revealed the hunters' positions, tracking their dropships. Fighter jets tore through cloaked crafts. Submarines shadowed alien carriers. Even as governments argued, soldiers acted. But it wasn't just armies. Civilians joined the fight. Farmers rigged explosives in their fields. Mechanics turned workshops into weapon forges. Hackers disrupted alien comms, feeding false data into their systems. Every street corner, every forest, every hill became a battlefield. Reversing the hunt. Outside New York City, a Zha'Kar dropship descended, disgorging an entire squad of elite hunters. Their armor gleamed with golden inlays. Their weapons crackled with lethal energy. This was meant to be a demonstration, a show of strength to crush resistance and reclaim honor. They marched into the city. What they found was not prey. It was a kill zone. Snipers opened fire from skyscrapers. Bullets enhanced with scavenged alien metal to pierce armor. Rockets streaked from hidden launchers. Streets exploded as mines detonated beneath their feet. Every turn they took led them deeper into a labyrinth of fire and fury. The hunters fought viciously, tearing through buildings, cutting humans apart with plasma blades. But for every human that fell, 10 more took their place. For every trap destroyed, 2 more waited. By the time the smoke cleared, the streets of New York were littered with alien corpses. The few survivors staggered back toward their dropship, only to find it sabotaged. Fuel cells removed, circuits fried. The last sight they saw was a wall of fire engulfing the craft as humans swarmed them. The shift. The world watched those images broadcast across every screen. Humanity had not only fought back, they had won. For the first time in their history, the Zha'Kar were on the defensive. Hunters who had once roared in triumph now muttered in unease. Their feeds showed comrades ripped apart not by superior technology, but by the will of prey who refused to break. On Earth, the shift was even greater. Panic hardened into defiance. Fear turned into fury. Humans began speaking not of survival, but of vengeance. Huntmaster Veyrath stood alone in the chamber of the Bloodfang, staring into the void of space. His claws dug into the railing. This was not how the hunt was meant to go. The prey should have cowered. They should have fled. Instead, they bit back with a savagery that unsettled even him. He snarled, his mandibles twitching. "So be it," he growled. "If they wish to fight like hunters, then we will give them a true hunt." But even as he spoke, he could not shake the unease that gnawed at him. For the first time in countless generations, the Zha'Kar were beginning to fear their prey. And down below, the humans were only just beginning. The hunters become the hunted. The forests were quiet. Too quiet. Zha'Kar Hunter Krail moved cautiously, his plasma blade humming faintly at his side. He had hunted on dozens of worlds, and silence was usually a sign of prey cowering in fear. But on Earth, silence had a different weight. It pressed down like a trap, waiting to snap shut. The squad of 6 spread out, cloaks shimmering, eyes scanning the darkened pine trees. They had been ordered to reclaim their honor after the losses in New York and Nairobi. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were still prey. That was what Krail told himself. A twig snapped. Krail turned sharply, raising his rifle, only to see nothing but shadows. His mandibles clicked uneasily, and then the world exploded. Razor wire whipped around his legs, yanking him into the air. Bullets ripped through the forest, tearing into his squad mates. Grenades thundered, showering dirt and fire. Krail roared as his cloak fizzled and died. From the tree-line, humans poured out, faces painted, rifles blazing, knives flashing. The hunters fought viciously, but they were surrounded, cut off, and drowned beneath the fury of coordinated ambushes. By the time the gunfire ceased, none of the Zha'Kar were left standing. Fear among the hunters. On the Bloodfang, the footage was replayed again and again. Warriors watched in silence as their comrades were slaughtered, their deaths not honorable duels, but swift, merciless executions. Huntmaster Veyrath clenched his fists. The High Council had begun to send messages of ridicule, mocking him, mocking his entire clan. To fail against prey was the deepest humiliation. But this was no ordinary prey. They strike from the shadows, one hunter muttered. They fight when wounded, said another. They do not retreat, a third whispered. Fear, an alien concept to the Zha'Kar, crept into their voices. The hunters were beginning to look over their shoulders, expecting humans in every shadow, turning offense into defense. On Earth, the tide had shifted. Humanity was no longer waiting to be hunted. They had learned the hunters' tactics, studied their weapons, and adapted. And humans excelled at adaptation. Special forces raided a Zha'Kar supply depot in the Sahara, moving like ghosts through the dunes. When dawn rose, the depot was in flames, its technology stripped bare, its guards massacred. In Eastern Europe, resistance fighters infiltrated a crashed dropship. Within hours, they had stripped its energy cores and learned to power scavenged weapons. Crude but deadly rifles capable of piercing hunter armor were distributed to militias within days. Even ordinary civilians fought back with ingenuity. Farmers in Kansas planted entire fields of explosives, drawing hunters into the open before igniting the earth beneath them. Fishermen in the Philippines lured Zha'Kar into narrow coves, where they were buried under collapsing rock slides. Everywhere, the hunters found themselves outmatched, not in strength, not in technology, but in sheer persistence and creativity. Captured. For the first time in their history, humans captured a Zha'Kar alive. It happened in the ruins of Warsaw, where a squad of hunters had tried to ambush survivors hiding in the subway tunnels. Instead, the hunters were overwhelmed in a brutal counterattack. One, badly wounded, was dragged into the light by soldiers. The creature snarled and thrashed, demanding release, demanding combat. But the humans gave him neither. They stripped him of his armor, bound him in chains, and studied him like he was the specimen. Interrogations revealed chilling truths. The Zha'Kar saw themselves as apex predators. They hunted not for survival, but for glory. They saw humanity as just another species to add to their trophies. When the alien boasted that Earth would burn, a soldier leaned close and whispered a phrase that would echo across the battlefield. "You came here for trophies. Now you are ours." Paranoia. The Zha'Kar grew restless. Hunters who once moved with pride now twitched at every sound. Their cloaks, once symbols of invisibility, felt useless against the relentless eyes of human snipers. Their armor, once impregnable, bore the marks of scavenged bullets and blades. They had never fought an enemy like this. On other worlds, prey fought to survive, but humans fought to win. Reports flooded in. Ambushes in jungles, assassinations in cities, sabotage in deserts. Every hunting ground turned into a graveyard. Veyrath himself could no longer ignore the truth. Humans had learned too quickly, adapted too fast. If this continued, the hunters would not leave Earth alive. The message. In Washington, London, Beijing, and Nairobi, leaders gathered to send a single, unified message. Broadcasts hijacked alien frequencies, transmitting in every direction. It was not a plea. It was not a surrender. It was a warning. "We are not prey," the message declared. "We are hunters too, and we will hunt you until the last of you is gone." The words reached the bloodfang. They echoed through the halls of every Zha'Kar ship. Warriors listened in silence, mandibles twitching, claws clenching. For the first time, they realized what true prey must feel like. Closing scene. On a darkened battlefield in Siberia, a squad of hunters moved cautiously, their weapons ready. Snow crunched under their feet. They thought they were alone. Then came the whistle of shells. Mortars lit the night. Sniper fire cracked through the trees. The hunters roared in defiance, but the shadows closed in, relentless. One hunter screamed before he fell. Another was dragged into the dark. The rest vanished under a storm of fire and steel. And above it all, unseen in the blizzard, human eyes watched, calculating, patient, merciless. The hunters had become the hunted, slaughtered in the shadows. The skies above Earth burned. Alien warships hovered in low orbit, their blackened hulls scarred from weeks of unrelenting combat. The Zha'Kar had underestimated this world, and now their honor was stained. Huntmaster Veyrath stood at the command deck of the Bloodfang, his claws gouging grooves into the railing as he stared at the holographic map of Earth. Dozens of hunting parties had been lost, dropships destroyed, camps annihilated. Even the High Council's jeers no longer echoed in his mind. only the rage of humiliation. "Prepare the final hunt," Veyrath growled. His warriors stiffened, mandibles clicking nervously. "We will descend as one. No more scattered hunts, no more ambushes. Every blade, every rifle. We will drown them in fire until this planet kneels." The hunters roared in forced defiance. Yet beneath their cries, unease lingered. They had seen the recordings. They knew what waited for them on the ground. The final assault. It began at dawn. Dozens of Zha'Kar dropships screamed through the atmosphere, blotting out the morning sun. They descended over cities and strongholds, unleashing waves of armored hunters. Plasma fire scorched the skies. Towers fell. Streets burned. For the first time, it looked like the Zha'Kar might reclaim dominance. But humanity had prepared. From the oceans rose submarines, launching torpedoes into the bellies of descending craft. Anti-air batteries hidden in mountains shredded dropships before they could land. Drones swarmed the skies, harrying hunters mid-descent with explosives strapped to their frames. And on the ground, armies waited. Not scattered militias or terrified civilians, but united forces, soldiers, resistance fighters, civilians, all fighting under one banner. The slaughter. In the jungles of South America, hunters marched in formation, their blades cutting through undergrowth. They expected another ambush, but not the scale that awaited them. Entire valleys detonated as humans triggered buried charges. Hunters were thrown into the air like ragdolls, their armor split open by steel and fire. Survivors staggered into the trees, only to be finished by arrows and bullets from unseen enemies. In Europe, hunters stormed the ruins of Berlin, roaring defiance. But every building was rigged, every street a kill zone. Snipers tracked their every step, mortars rained from the skies, and flames consumed entire squads. The hunters charged through the inferno, only to fall into collapsing tunnels that swallowed them whole. In Asia, hunters attempted to breach fortified strongholds. Instead, they were met by coordinated artillery, missile strikes, and swarms of drones that tore their ranks apart. Hunters who once reveled in chaos now found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Everywhere they landed, the same pattern repeated. They came to kill, and instead they were slaughtered. The last stand. Veyrath himself led the assault on a ruined city once called Chicago. His armor gleamed with trophies from past hunts. His plasma blade burned with crackling energy. He had sworn to take a human skull with his own claws, to restore honor to his people. His hunters followed, roaring into the rubble. At first, they cut down soldiers and tore through barricades. Veyrath himself ripped apart a tank with his bare hands, his triumph echoing across the battlefield. But then the shadows closed in. Explosions cut off retreat routes. Snipers rained fire from rooftops. Rockets screamed through the air, striking his warriors in the heart of their charge. One by one, his hunters fell, some crushed beneath rubble, others riddled with bullets, their cloaks and armor worthless. Veyrath fought like a beast cornered, his blade carving through human after human. Blood splattered his armor, smoke clouded his vision, and still they came. Always more humans, always relentless. They did not fight with the grace of hunters, but with the fury of a species that refused to die. At last, surrounded on all sides, Veyrath raised his blade for one final charge. He roared his name into the chaos, demanding honor, demanding fear. What he received was silence, broken only by the thunder of gunfire. The huntmaster of the Zha'Kar fell, his body riddled with bullets, his blade shattering against the concrete. His final thought was not of pride, but of disbelief. How could prey become predators? The end of the Zha'Kar. With Veyrath's death, the hunters broke. Scattered, leaderless, they fled to their ships, only to find them sabotaged and burning. Submarines dragged wreckage into the depths. Missiles streaked into the sky, tearing fleeing vessels apart. By nightfall, the once proud Zha'Kar armada was nothing but debris orbiting Earth, a graveyard of arrogance and hubris. On the ground, Humans stood amid the ruins of cities and forests, battered but unbroken. Their victory was not clean, not without loss. But it was victory. The legend spreads. In the aftermath, fragments of Zha'Kar transmissions were intercepted by other alien empires across the stars. They had expected to hear of Earth's conquest, of human skulls mounted in alien halls. Instead, they heard silence, and then whispers. The hunters went to Earth. The message carried, distorted but clear. They sought prey. They found death. Stories spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Empires that once mocked humanity now spoke in hushed tones. The humans were dangerous. They did not run. They did not yield. They did not break. They hunted. Closing scene. A boy in a small farming town, the same one where it had all begun, stood beside his father in the ashes of their rebuilt home. Above them, streaks of burning alien ships scarred the sky like falling stars. "Will they come back?" the boy asked. The father looked at the sky, jaw set, eyes hard. "No," he said quietly. "Not after this." And so it was written into legend. The alien hunters came to Earth for hunting, but got slaughtered.